Hey everybody, welcome back to Randomly Relaxing. It's been a long time since I've made a video. It's been very busy. I have not even really had a chance to make videos for my other channel, which is a much bigger channel, ASMR Sports. But I finally got a video up there the other day and wanted to see if I could get the ball rolling on content for this channel as well. Hope everybody's doing well. If you're a first time viewer of this channel, the intention is for all of us to try to relax a little bit, so I'm speaking in a kind of a calm, low voice. It's very much the opposite of most content on YouTube, which tends to kind of appeal to the lizard brain in all of us that seeks flashy, exciting new information. So, today I was very interested to see a news item about the January 6th investigation. If you have no idea what the January 6th investigation is, I'll be shocked. And maybe it's because you don't live in the U.S. and you aren't following news here all that closely, but of course January 6th is the date that there was what most, I think, people call an attempted insurrection to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election by interfering with the process occurring at the U.S. Capitol building, where they certify the results of the Electoral College and officially announce, I guess, the winner of the presidential election. At that event, there was a significant number of people who marched from a rally that President Trump at that time, was giving kind of down the street. And the crowd sort of made their way to the Capitol grounds, where there were barriers preventing people from getting too close to the building. Those barriers were breached, and the crowd made their way basically up the steps of the Capitol building and eventually breached the windows and doors, breaking both of those and getting inside of the Capitol building and vandalizing many of the offices of Congress people in the building and making their way to the main floor of the Capitol and requiring the evacuation in the nick of time of all of the senators that were there trying to accomplish the business of the Congress at that point, which was certifying the Electoral College votes in the 2020 presidential election. So that is what January 6th sort of refers to, and there have been many prosecutions of people who were present that day in Washington, and for whom there is like video evidence of them participating in a lot of the destruction of the property there. I think there's like several hundred cases pending or resolved. Most of them so far have related to, pardon me, that's my chair, have related to like trespass. So basically, being present within the confines of the Capitol building, after the entryways were breached, is a crime. It's a misdemeanor, but it is a federal crime, prosecuted by the Department of Justice. And I've noticed that a lot of people have commented that they think that the sort of prosecution of crimes committed on January 6th seemed to be very slow moving, and dealing with a lot of lower level kind of crimes, misdemeanors, and things for which there's not really a ton of jail time available under the sentencing guidelines. But I did see maybe a month ago, there was, I think, an interview, or else it was comments from like a press briefing with the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, and some, he was making comments about, what exactly is going on with the investigations, where they're at, where they're headed, and so forth. And, his comments at that time were that most of the prosecutions and convictions that had occurred to date were indeed lower level matters, but that the nature of the job that they do at the Department of Justice when they're trying to determine criminal liability for a particular event or series of events is to start at the bottom and kind of work your way to the top, because a lot of the times the information that comes from the lower level prosecutions is useful in determining liability for those who are further up the chain. You can, kind of see this a lot in criminal investigations of larger criminal enterprises, like, drug-related offenses, or RICO-related, like gang, mafia-type operations. If you, follow any of those kinds of investigations, criminal investigations, you'll know, or, this is often the subject of sort of, popular media, television, and movies as well, which of course is dramatized, but I think gets sometimes the general idea correct, which is that often the prosecutors, be they state or federal, are trying to develop the evidence with lower level offenders by getting their testimony, getting their prosecution started, so that they may be incentivized to prosecute, or cooperate with the prosecution by serving as witnesses or providing evidence that can be useful in convicting people higher up in the organization. The goal, of course, with most criminal investigatory matters is to, or prosecutory matters, I should say, is to get the biggest fish that you can, the top of the food chain, the mastermind, if you will, of a criminal enterprise is always the goal in a criminal prosecution of a organization. So, this all makes sense if you understand the sort of basic way in which prosecutions like this operate. So when I saw those comments, I said, okay, well, that's kind of what I would expect, understanding a little bit about how the process works myself. But the question was, when are we going to start seeing some of these higher level prosecutions? And the answer to that came earlier today. Today is Thursday, the 13th of January. And this page that you've been staring at for the last 10 minutes while I've been talking is the new story I refer to, in which the leader of the Oath Keepers, this gentleman here, Stewart Rhodes, who I discovered his first name is actually Elmer. Stewart is his middle name, and he goes by that presumably because he doesn't like the name Elmer, and I can understand that. But in any event, this gentleman here was arrested after being indicted on a number of charges today. And this is a pretty big deal. I'm not sure, that this has gotten the coverage that I think it will merit in time. But it's early, and, sometimes the media doesn't really know what's critical and what's not. But I'm sure you'll see lots of talking heads talking about this development. And I wanted to kind of dig into it a little bit, so that's what I'm going to try to do today. So, this video, I want to kind of work like I will do similar videos in the future, where I see something interesting. I have, kind of read the basic information, but want to dig a little bit deeper and want to take you along on that journey. So you can kind of see how I operate and, join me for the process of learning a bit more about some of these stories. So, with that, the story here is about Stewart Rhodes and his indictment for, as they mention in the story, seditious conspiracy, which is precisely what it sounds like. It's the, conspiracy, which is the sort of conspiratorial action of two or more people to commit a crime. That crime being sedition, which is the use of violence to, the definition we'll look at a little bit later, but basically it's to interfere with the, operation of the government. And so, it included a lot of things, but in this case it was an attempt to interfere with the function of the Congress on January 6th to certify the election of the 2020 presidential, or certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. It mentions co-conspirators here, and we'll look a little bit deeper at that as well and see who exactly was involved. And this kind of tries to summarize the indictment, which is, I think it's like 15 or so pages. And I want to look at that with you all, kind of see what we see in that document. So, without further ado, what I did is I searched, I can't remember what I searched, but it was probably like, Stewart Rhodes indictment. Ended up on this page here. This is the DOJ's press release on the indictment. This has quite a bit more information, and this is actually a pretty good summary of like what facts are in the indictment if you don't want to read the indictment, which is, sometimes a bit of a dry experience in the way that indictments are written. They're organized by the charges that are in them. In this case, there's quite a few charges, I think 9 total, so it's not always the easiest for folks to get through, but this is a nice little summary of it. And basically what this says is all these people here, their ages and their states of residence, were indicted for, I think, all of the offenses in the indictment. Again, we'll take a look at that. Oh, actually, this is the related case indictments, and the ones that are in this one are here. So, you can read this if you want a quick summary of things, but what I noticed down here was what I was looking for, which is the actual indictments. And this has some related indictments. The Crowell one, I think, is something earlier. Rhodes is the current one. Walden is another related one. So I clicked on the Rhodes one, and that's what's here. So this was filed yesterday, January 12th. This is what an indictment looks like. If you're not familiar, hopefully you never have to find out the hard way. What an indictment looks like. But it's got Elmer Stewart Rhodes. That's Stewart Rhodes, the third. By the way, I didn't know this about this guy. I never really looked into this guy too much until he was starting to be in the news very recently for, the very reasons that are described in this indictment. He has been in the news, and basically since January 6th. There's been a lot about him as somebody who is likely to be under investigation. Turned out to be quite correct. But he actually is a Yale-educated lawyer. I don't know if he, was practicing at all. I think he's been doing his, his organization, Oath Keepers stuff, full-time for quite some time, but kind of interesting that he has that background. Usually Yale lawyers are kind of a white shoe kind of, I don't know, yuppie type of person. But this gentleman, he's a veteran, and the Oath Keepers is a group of, if you don't know, the Oath Keepers is a group of people who are, I think, current or former veterans or police officers or other kind of government or former government officials who have taken an oath of office, which in the United States generally means that you're taking an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States. The idea behind the organization, as I understand it very casually, is that this is a group of people who are saying that they will always keep that oath, even if their job or something else in their life operates to require or demand them to do something they feel is in violation of the oath to preserve the Constitution. So, for example, if you were in the military and someone, your senior officer, told you to assassinate the leader of a country, generally speaking, that's, well, I don't know if that's a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of a bunch of treaties. But there may be okay, let's maybe say if your senior officer orders you to execute summarily a United States citizen without due process, that would certainly be a violation of the Constitution. And so these folks are saying that would be an example where they would uphold what they believe is an oath to the Constitution that prevails over any order from their superior officer or the government or whatever else. And so that's a very easy to understand example that probably every American citizen will be happy to support, but the problem is, that the Oath Keepers seem to want to, stretch the, I think the general theory of upholding the Constitution to mean that they don't have to comply with any number of things. Maybe it's paying taxes. Maybe it's, participating in, like, the orderly execution of laws that they don't agree with. Those laws could be, I'm quite sure that the Oath Keepers have been very active in opposing things like, vaccine and mask mandates, which they would, I'm sure, argue, violate the constitutional rights of Americans, and therefore should not be complied with, and that they are authorized or justified in using force to resist those kinds of laws. So that's sort of the basic description of the Oath Keepers. If you're an Oath Keeper and I've said anything you think is inaccurate, feel free to leave a comment. But that's my kind of general understanding of them. So in any event, here we are with a fairly long list of defendants. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 defendants, and we have criminal counts here. Each of these is a law alleged to have been violated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, there's 6, 7, 8, and then multiple counts here under this particular law. A little bit of education for those who care. So these cite 18 USC 2384, and the USC stands not for the University of Southern California, but for United States Code. United States Code is sort of the, it's the sort of, how do I phrase this? It's the, I don't want to say codification because it's sort of, I don't know, it sounds too legalese, but it's the, it's basically the written laws of the United States. So when they pass laws in Congress, those are bills, and those bills typically say, it will be enacted in, 18 USC whatever section, if it's a new section, or 18 USC section whatever will be amended in the following way. But the bills that the House of Representatives and the Senate deal with are not actually laws. They are proposals to create or amend United States Code, and the United States Code has different titles. 18 is the title here. All criminal law is Title 18. Section 2384 is the kind of subpart of that. Title 17 relates to something else. I think it's intellectual property laws. Title 16 is something else. Title 15 is something else, and so forth. So if you're a criminal lawyer, which I don't know a whole lot about criminal law, but I know enough to be dangerous. So be careful. You're dealing with 18 USC all the time if you do federal criminal law. So there you go. There's a little bit about organization of our laws. This indictment comes down from a grand jury, and the way that grand juries work, if you don't know, I'm sure everybody's heard of the term grand jury, but a lot of people don't really know what they are. Basically, a grand jury is a special type of jury, which is a group of people that is tasked with deciding whether or not to charge a particular individual or organization with with crimes. So the way they work generally, I'm taking water here. The way they work is that they're impaneled by request of a prosecutor. So a United States attorney would be a prosecutor. In this case, it's a prosecutor for the District of Columbia. Every state and the District of Columbia have their own head attorney, Department of Justice attorney called the United States Attorney. Then they have people underneath them called the Assistant United States Attorneys. And they handle matters that, relate to the state they're in. And then the Attorney General oversees all of the U.S. attorneys in each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia. So a prosecutor in this case from the District of Columbia, I think that prosecutor will be at the end here, unless it's an assistant. No, this is a U.S. Attorney, Matthew Graves, so he's the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, I presume. I don't keep track of these things, but anyway, so he calls a grand jury. The grand jury is selected. I don't know how many people are on a grand jury, but it's probably like 9. Might be smaller, but the purpose of the grand jury is to hear evidence from the prosecutor. And these grand juries are they are confidential. So if they don't indict, you'll probably never hear about what happened unless you happen to know a juror and they say something, but generally they're not supposed to say anything. And the hearings themselves are always confidential. They're maintained in confidentiality regardless of whether they result in indictment or not. And only the prosecution is permitted to make their case. It's not an adversarial kind of situation where you have two parties represented by their attorneys and they kind of argue. It's only the prosecution laying out the evidence, information, and argument for why they think an indictment should be made. And the grand jury then decides whether or not they agree that an indictment should be made. In this case, the grand jury decided to indict on the 17 counts, and accordingly the indictment was drafted and filed by the prosecutor, the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. So if we go down here, it's funny, this reference to stacks I've never heard of before, but I think it means basically like a group of conspirators, and they've got 2 different ones, and this is where they describe who's in each of these groups. So like Kelly Meggs here is number 1, or is the first one listed. She's from Florida and head of the Florida chapter of the Oath Keepers. This is a person who assists the Florida Oath Keepers. Jessica Watkins from Ohio leads the Ohio Oath Keepers. Joseph Hackett from Florida doesn't seem to be affiliated officially with any Oath Keepers organization. Same with David Morshell in the second group. This is a leader of this group. It says this one's a resident of New Jersey. So yeah, so it looks like some of these folks are leaders of state kind of chapters of the Oath Keepers, and some people are perhaps unrelated to the Oath Keepers, but were involved with the actions of some of the Oath Keepers folks that have landed them in this indictment. So now they go through each of the counts, which is a law that has been violated. And count one is this seditious conspiracy, and it's 18 USC 20 384. If we look that up, Cornell has the entire U.S. code. See, it's Title 18. We can actually take a let's go here and go back. So these are all the titles. You can see there's 54 of them. Crimes 18, 17 copyright, 16 conservation, 15 commerce and trade. So if you ever wanted to know what the laws of the United States are, this is where you go. The United States Code will give you the answers. There are, of course, other places that, law comes from in the United States, but the U.S.C. is the sort of place where bills of Congress are codified. All right, so we'll go back and look at this actually very succinct, section of the U.S. Code, 18 U.S.C. 2384. Seditious conspiracy. It says if two or more persons, that's the conspiracy, in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof, they shall be fined under this title, or imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both. So this, it's kind of funny, when I looked this up, I was like, this is about, like, conspiring to overthrow the United States government. You would think that there's not a more grave crime, at least against the government, than this one. So I was like, man, I wonder what the sense will be. Is it like life? Is it death? Possible? But it's only 20 years, so trying to overthrow the government is, not as risky as one might think. But anyways, that's the first count. And it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so everybody is indicted for that count. And then they just kind of talk about what they're doing is basically describing what facts support the different, like the requirements for violating that law, so that the court knows exactly what is being alleged that violates the law. So, two more people, okay, got that. And then whether it's like attempting to overthrow or attempting to interfere with the execution of laws or whatever else will be described in this section. All right, so, and I don't want to bother too much with that. This is actually kind of a long video, and I got stuff I got to do, so we'll kind of skip ahead a little bit, and there's a lot of stuff here. One thing I did read, and this mentions it, is that the government managed to have access to communications that were sent by some of these co-conspirators over the Signal app, chat app, which does use encryption. I mean, that's kind of the point of it. So some way, somehow, they were able to gain access to that, and that could have been that's the sort of thing that could be from some of the lower level prosecutions that they did. They might have, had access to chat. What's the word I'm looking for? Basically, like the logs to chats. If somebody at a lower level had access to those as well, and they, cooperated with the prosecution in order for them to get a more lenient sentence, they could get it that way. Sometimes you see prosecutors trying to defeat encryption, sometimes by asking companies like Apple to, decrypt messages for them. Although, the position generally of Apple and others is that they don't actually have the ability to do that in most cases. So often what you see in the news is the government like sort of wanting to pass laws requiring Apple to, build their products so that when things are encrypted, there's like a master key that Apple can maintain that would give them access to anything that the government requested. And if you know anything about technology or encryption, you know that that's a stupid thing to request, because you can't actually make encryption that has like a giant hole in it that a master password could give you access to all of the encrypted things, and have that be like remotely sufficiently secure for most like companies, or people for that matter. So that's a bad idea. However, a lot of times what I see in these cases is like the prosecution will have a phone from a suspect and they're trying to get into it, and Apple won't help them, so they just go and use like basically like this off-the-shelf software or hardware from like security companies that can easily decrypt stuff, either by like trial and error password stuff, or some other kind of like backdoor that is like unintentionally in the software. So there are ways. Sorry for the loud chair noises. All right. So, anyways, they do have some communications, and that was part of the evidence that was in this complaint. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of stuff that you kind of want to get a summary of in that press release. I'm trying to find the other counts, and they're putting all of this information in count 1, but then in count 2 they'll say like, they basically repeat everything that was said before. Yeah, right here, paragraphs 1 through 13 and 18 through 134 are re-alleged and incorporated. So that's why the stuff that's in count 1 is so much longer than what will be in count 2 here. And again, it looks like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so everybody again listed in count 2, and this is 18 U.S.C. 1512, subsection K, conspiracy to obstruct an unofficial proceeding. I looked that one up, and I think that was 20 years as well. I don't think I've looked up anything beyond that. Maybe I did this one too. But this one looks to have, count 3 looks to have everybody listed. So I think everybody's listed for all of these, but we'll find out. Conspiracy to prevent an officer from discharging any duties. So that would be, the fact that there are many officers who were present at the Capitol building that day, all of them from the Capitol Police Force, whose jurisdiction is the Capitol grounds. They were basically just sort of trampled over, and some of them were killed, and many of them were injured, and actually several of them died by suicide after this happened, and that was just like terrible. So, the ones that did not die but had lived through this and maybe were injured, I think, are probably going to have PTSD symptoms for many, many years. Count 5 is destruction of government property and aiding and abetting. Okay. I kind of want to look up like this one because 1361. Oh boy. Treason. I want to look at treason real quick. So treason wasn't in here, but yeah. So this is the one I was kind of thinking of, right? Sedition is apparently not as bad as treason, but this one is whoever owing, and this is going to involve probably foreign enemies. Whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United. You've probably heard that term, aid and comfort, within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason, and shall suffer death, or shall be imprisoned not less than 5 years, and fined under this. You know, it's interesting. Well, this is not less, so theoretically the maximum is life in prison. But it's funny that it mentions 5 years, but it also has death and fined, not or fined. So you get a fine, and you get at least 5 years for treason, and you could be sentenced to die. So if you levy war against the United States, I'm not sure what it would take to qualify as levying a war. You'd probably have to have like an army. Oh, did these guys have an army? Anyways, I don't know. That's probably a very high bar. But the other one is adheres to enemies. So you often hear about treason primarily in the context of like foreign wars, and like if you were, if you were in Vietnam and you were teaming up with the Viet Cong to sabotage the United States Army, that would certainly be treason, and you very well may be sentenced to death for that. Anyways, I was going to try to find that one. 18 U.S.C. 1361. 1631. Typo. Really? Transfer to cure wanted. Oh, so that's 28. Typo. I see I can just type in the section I want up here. That's handy. Oh, come on. Why? 18 USC 1631. Oh, what the hell is going on? Oh, man. 18 USC 1361. Blasted. Government property. Alright, so I wanted to see what the... okay, fine. Imprisonment not more than 10 years. So, not super low, but not as bad as the first few counts, all of which were 20 years. Count 6, civil disorder and aiding and abetting. And looks like just one there. This one, everything. Count 4, just some of them. And I noticed that the main guy, this dude, Stewart Rhodes, is not listed in this one, where there's less than all 11. So, and then this one, civil disorder, just this one defendant. This one, civil disorder, aiding and abetting. Interesting. So it's the exact same law. Must dispense are different facts applicable just to this guy versus the facts for this woman. Here's tampering. Oh, really? Tampering with documents. So this is this Stewart Rhodes fellow. Uh, deleted his cellular, telephone, certain media files, and communications that showed his involvement in the conduct alleged herein. Okay. Can't do that. If there's evidence of your crimes in your possession, you better keep them around, unfortunately. Or else not get caught destroying them, as it appears Mr. Rhodes did. So yeah, a bunch of stuff that's like just one person. Tampering, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. You know, these crimes are certainly seditious conspiracy and conspiracy to obstruct and obstruction of an official proceeding. I think most of these are felonies in this list of counts. But the first, few have potential jail time of 20 years. And when you've got 3 of them, you're looking at some time for sure. So what I think you're going to see, especially when you have a conspiracy that's of so many people, is that some of these folks will not be so interested in getting to trial, and they may cut deals to cooperate with the government, and I guarantee you that the goal of the prosecution is to get as many of the people who are not Elmer Stewart Rhodes III to provide cooperation that will help them in convicting Elmer Stewart Rhodes, so that Stewart Rhodes is left with a very grim situation of having one or more of his co-conspirators being willing to turn state's evidence, as they say, against him, and making the case against him all that stronger than it is right now, with just the evidence that the prosecution has gathered through looking at communications and doing investigations with the FBI, which is the sort of police branch of the Department of Justice. And I'll tell you what, this is my prediction. Or at least I think this is what they're, this is not rocket science, right? What they're going to try to do, the government, is get some of these, lower on the totem pole conspirators to turn against the people higher up, so that the case against Stewart Rhodes just gets stronger and stronger, and he's sort of feeling like it's going to be impossible to walk away without substantial jail time. At which point, there are people above Stewart Rhodes who, if they are participating in criminal activity, the government certainly wants to try to build a case against, and those would be people potentially, who are members of the government. Could be people in Congress, could be people in the Trump administration, could be, people like, who's the guy that is currently indicted for contempt of Congress? Steve, I forget his name, but you know what I'm talking about if you follow this stuff. There are sort of some more noteworthy, I think, people out there who aren't really part of the Trump administration and aren't really, government officials, but that the, I think government is interested in, trying to pin down crimes on if they're able to do so, and I think you'll see this. In fact, it's funny, I feel like I saw maybe a week or so ago a story about how even before this indictment, people were speculating that Stewart Rhodes was going to turn state's evidence on like some of the other groups that were involved with January 6th, because he wasn't like happy with how things were going in terms of like fundraising. There's been sort of a mad dash to fundraise by a lot of organizations that were involved with January 6th, because the situation at hand just sort of lends itself right to them saying they need to raise money to, further their mission and possibly to defend themselves and, all these things. And so there's a bunch of competing organizations, including, the Trump campaign is of course, or the prospective Trump campaign, or some of the PACs that Trump basically runs, want to do fundraising for future, like political goals, or just to have, cash on hand in those organizations, whether they be politically motivated or not. When I say politically motivated, I mean like in terms of Trump actually running for office. He may want to do other things besides run for office. I guess those things are political too, right? Like you could contribute money to other people running, or buy a bunch of ads saying whatever messaging he's interested in getting out to the public. But in any event, I thought I read that about Stewart Rhodes, and so he may be interested in cooperating for reasons unrelated to this, or at least not driven entirely by this indictment. So we'll see what develops. But I was very interested to see this indictment being filed. I think it's very important. I think it's newsworthy if anybody's charged with sedition at any time. And it's certainly newsworthy in this case because of, the connection between the Oath Keepers and many powerful figures in the government, including President Trump, and those, in his administration that were involved in some way with January 6th. So this development to me is quite momentous, and I think foreshadows similar indictments for other leaders of organizations involved with January 6th, because there were several, and I think all of those indictments foreshadow indictments and investigations of people above, these kind of smaller organizations, including those who were in the government at the time of January 6th. So I hope this was mildly interesting, or that you've relaxed a bit as we've gone through things. I hope you've learned a little bit. If you think I've said anything that's incorrect, I hope you'll feel free to leave a comment. I do read a lot about this stuff, and my educational and professional background also gives me a fairly good understanding of these things. So, I hope that I've been able to spread a little bit of knowledge and understanding to anyone who's interested in these kinds of things, but not really had a chance to explore them all that in depth. But there you have it. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please give a like to the video and subscribe if you have not already, and hopefully I'll be back again soon with some more randomly relaxing content. Have a great one. Catch y'all later.